Hello my friends, George here from No Nonsense Metal Reviews. Welcome back to the channel. Here again with another bands you need to hear recommendation. Another band, if you're not familiar with this one, then you really need to check them out. Certainly if you're in the mood for some ripping, snorting thrash metal, you're going to want to get familiar with Dustbolt. Dustbolt have been around since about 2007. We've got 5 full-length albums in their catalogue. Hailing from Germany, this is an interesting band. It's a young band, been around for a few years, few albums, but tons of energy in this band, clearly. They've had a pretty good rate of releases. And interesting in the fact that they are a thrash metal band. There's no doubt about that. Certainly not when you study those first 4 albums. The most recent album that we'll get onto a little bit later might be a little bit different. It's a bit of a wild card, but I'd say at the core, it's still thrash. But they aren't just another new wave of thrash metal band, nor are they just another German thrash metal band. We know that Germany is an absolute hotbed, a crucible of metal in general, but also of thrash. Some cracking thrash metal bands coming out of Germany, new and old. There's a little bit, and I think it's fair to say, there's a little bit of destruction and tankard in Dustbolt's sound. There's a similarity perhaps with some of the other sort of younger bands like Traitor, who I've recently talked about here on the channel. But just in general, Germany seems to be churning out so many great bands at the minute, certainly within thrash and sort of thrash, black metal, speed metal, that kind of stuff. But Dustbolt do have a little bit of a German thrash sound. Yep, that's fair enough. But they're also kind of a perfect combination, a bit of an equilibrium between German thrash and the US sound as well. I think there's an undeniable influence and nod, of course there is, to the US thrash metal bands, the likes of Metallica and Overkill and Anthrax. That's there. And are we surprised? No, it's thrash metal. There's only so much you can do with it. There's only so much room to move. But Dustbolt do thrash, and they do it really well. This is the first album. This is Violent Demolition. This was released in 2012, I believe, and this is a good album. I love the cover. The cover just screams thrash metal, as does the lineup here. The light-hearted party shot that we've got here, lineup shot of the band, consisting of Lenny on vocals, guitars, Flo on guitars, Ben on bass, if that's how it's pronounced, apologies if not, and Nico on drums. Swigging the beers, looking thrash. Yeah, fair enough. What I will say about Dustbolt, and one of the reasons why they are such a band that you need to hear, is that I love thrash. They're a good thrash band, first. Secondly, they're also really good players. So it's not just constant chug. There is, of course, no small measures, no half measures of chug. There's plenty of that in there. Plenty of those lovely, iconic, crunchy, thrashing riffs that we all know and love. I certainly do. But they are good players. So there is also plenty of really solid guitar work here. Good solos, good leads. The bass is constant and audible. I like that. That's important in thrash for me. And important in metal in general, of course. But the drumming's brilliant. Driving machine gun stuff. Proper battery. Proper engine stuff. It gets you. And it gets you moving. Which is what thrash is all about, of course. And as we know, that is a thrash cover. But they are not just a thrash band. I would say that there's some good musicianship being shown here. And Violent Demolition is a really good, solid debut album. I would say it's a great thrash album that shows some talent there. Vocals are also really good. Not anything groundbreaking, no kind of amazing Bobby Ellsworth style vocals where that guy can really sing, you know, or Joey Belladonna. Kind of use those two as reference points quite a lot because they're great singers as well. But at this stage, anyway, the vocals are much more thrash, you know, shouting and snarling. That's what we like. Latterly, as is the way, we've got some really good cleans and really good different vocals coming through there. But first and foremost, if you want some snotty, energetic, frantic thrash, but done well, Violent Demolition, good place for you to start. We've got some great tracks here, kicking off with Opulence Contaminated, which is a brilliant Fast and Furious track. It's a proper grab your beer, chug it, and flail to it kind of song. Then we've got Violent Abolition, which is a beast of a track. March Through Pain, bit of an album highlight there. Absolutely love that particular number. Then we got Toxic Attack, a song that includes Toxic in the title. You know that is going to be a good one. You know that's going to be very thrash. I'm thinking Toxic Waltz sort of stuff. Pleasure on Illusion is a good one. And the closing track, Deviance, features none other than, I guess, former now vocalist of Sepultura, Derek Green, who is a great vocalist. Got a lot of love for Derek and for Sepultura. And it's just a really good song. It's got that kind of, I guess, because of his vocals, it's got that kind of Sepultura vibe to it. It's thrashing, but it's got energy. It's got a kind of angst to it. So a really strong album. They come back a couple of years later, 2014, with this absolute beast. This is Awake the Riot. This is a riot of violence. See what I did there? This is a thrashing album. So good. A much, I guess, bigger album. Let's say bigger, it's longer, where Violent Demolition, I think that's around sort of 40, 45 minutes. Awake the Riot is getting on for like an hour. Yeah, around that. Somewhere between 50 and 60 minutes, I think, in total. But it is an absolute cracker of an album. I love this one. In fact, I think this could be my favourite. I don't want to commit to that yet. We don't need to go that far. But what I will say is that everything has kind of ramped up a gear. The album sounds great. The production on all of their albums is really good. The playing has improved. Not to discredit, of course, Violent Demolition, because that's a great album, good playing there, but Awake the Riot steps up a gear. Better playing, bigger, the whole thing is more aggressive. There's a little bit more kind of technicality in there, maybe, a little bit more sophistication. So, as I mentioned with Violent Demolition, it's not just about the chug, but with Awake the Riot, things become even more kind of sophisticated and involved. It's great. So many great tracks here. Love the cover. Screaming thrash at you. Absolutely love it. Some really good numbers here. Kick off with Living Hell, which is such a good track. Great way to kick off the album. Got Soul Eraser. If that doesn't get you like shattering your neck, headbanging along, then nothing will. Beneath the Earth's good one. You Lost Sight. Then we've got track number 5, Agent Thrash. I mean, that's probably not a particularly great title for a song, but it is a great thrash metal song. And a great thrash metal title. Give them some credit. It's a really solid track as well. It's a proper ripping thrash track. Awake the Riot, The Final War is a kind of short and sweet thrasher. So these tracks do tend to be quite long, actually, getting on sort of 5-minute mark. Drowned in Blind Faith shows a little bit more kind of progression, technicality there. It's one of the tracks, one of many here, that shows that step up. We've got Eternal Waste, which is a great one. And the quite grand, I will say, Distant Scream, The Monotonous. 7 minutes of very sophisticated thrash. I love it. And then we've got I believe it's a Evil Dead cover, Future Shock. Good album, really good album. Not a bad track there. It's a little bit more of a neck workout, given that it's longer and it's just frantic thrash. Freaking great stuff. Awake the Riot, second album, followed up pretty aptly by Mass Confusion. This is a very confusing album. Not really that confusing. It is confusing in the sense that it's still thrashing, but it just seems to get better. If you think that Awake the Riot is good, which it is, bit of a favourite, you might actually find if you're looking for something a little bit more than just thrash, we start to get some flourishes of maybe a bit more of a melodic edge coming through as well. Think when Metallica experimented with other kind of flavours in their music, like Fade to Black, for example, or Orion. We've actually got cleans on this album. Well, I say cleans, it's kind of like more of a spectral, shrieking, clean singing. It's certainly interesting though. But Mass Confusion is a really good album. I wouldn't say that I prefer it to Awake the Riot personally, because I think that's a top-notch album. But released in 2016. This, I believe, is the same lineup here. Lenny, Flo, Ben and Nico. This is a good one. It kicks off with a really interesting, short and sweet thrashing track. Sick Brain, or Sick X Brain. Sick 10 Brain, Sick Times Brain. I don't know. Sick as in vomit, and then there's a X Brain. Whatever. Confusing stuff. Mass Confusion is a great title track, really good, ripping stuff. Again, it's almost like they've just stepped up a gear, clearly just getting better as musicians, getting better as players, you know, doing what they do. Allergy is a great one. I think there's flourishes there of starting to experiment more, pushing the boundaries, the limits of what they can do with thrash, which is to be expected. But that's a great one. Then we've got Turn to Grey and Blind to Art. Again, it's difficult to really pinpoint it, but it's like they've turned it up a gear in terms of maybe better songwriting or trying to do something that isn't just repeating what they've already done with Violent Demolition and Awake the Riot. But these are all really good tracks. There's not a bad track on this album. Mind the Gap is a really great one. Exit is the interesting, melodic, clean track. There's a lot of Corey Taylor-isms in the vocal style there. I think Corey is definitely, clearly a big vocal influence on Lenny. No bad thing. I like Corey. I think Corey's a good vocalist, good singer. Great frontman as well. Just an all-round legend. So it's hardly surprising that he's going to have potentially influenced here. Great cover, again. Can't overlook the brilliance of these three album covers in particular. Taking Your Last Breath is a good one. Portraits of Decay is decent. And Masters of War. Really solid album. As I say, they've just carried on producing top quality metal. But I think there's growth. There's pushing the boundaries of thrash a little bit there. But really solid. So we've got a really solid third album. Mass Confusion from 2016. Now things start to get a little bit more evolved. Things are growing even more with the follow-up. This one, maybe, actually I would say it's a good cover. It's one that you kind of study. The more you study it, the more you're seeing. But I see that as either a black hole into the abyss or an eye. I don't know what it's actually meant to be, but this is Trapped in Chaos, released in 2019. This is a really good album. Unsurprisingly, I think that there's definitely growth and progression again, yes. There's our lineup. Still consistent, I believe, by this point. Lenny, Flo, Ben, and Nico. Yep. This is a good album. This is Dust Bolts and Justice for All. You know, it's thrash. Maybe it's a little bit different to what came before it, but not in a bad way at all. Just some great tracks here. The playing is really good. I think the songwriting and the structure is really good as well. You can tell there's some really catchy choruses. The guitar work You know, the leads and solos and the rhythms is brilliant on all of these albums, I think it's fair to say, but there's some particularly crunchy tracks here. It says 2018 on the back of here. I thought it was 2019, but hey, 2018, 19, around that time. The Fourth Strike, great intro track there, brilliant stuff. I think that one of the things you really notice on Trapped in Chaos is the progression in the vocals. There's definitely a development of maybe comfortability, of just ability. It's good stuff. Dead Inside is brilliant. The Bad Ad is fantastic. Bloody Rain, quite a melodic track. Very catchy though. Great riffs. Rhythms to My Madness, excellent. Shed My Skin, it's almost a strange track, but kind of reminds me, maybe it's just because of the title. Pantera kind of comes to mind, but Killing Time is great. Trapped in Chaos and Another Day in Hell, closing 2 tracks there. They are excellent. You know, showing that growth, showing that skill. Freaking good. But I would say this is still top-notch thrash, just quite sophisticated thrash at that. So then we get onto the most recent album, which was released in 2024. It's the only Dust Bowl album that I have on vinyl. This is Sound and Fury. You notice there's a few differences here. There's a few different factors. The cover. So the front cover, is a bit of a funny one because it's kind of like a strange freak out party moment. I don't know, or either that, or they're just messing around, having a good time. Fine, not a problem. The back cover is better. That is a good cover. Definitely like that one. Very interesting. But this album, 5-year gap between this and Trapped in Chaos, and the resulting article is a very different album. When I first heard this, I wasn't necessarily all that convinced, I will admit. The only reason I have it on vinyl, I will say, is because the CD is insanely expensive. It was about £20 just for what appeared to be a standard. And then this vinyl I found for about £14 new and sealed online. So yeah, I thought I'd give the vinyl a spin. And actually I'll take this opportunity to show off the rather interesting colour scheme of this one. So it is an interesting album with an interesting colour scheme, definitely. Got that upside down, just realised. Ta-da! It's cool, kind of like metallic, grey. Very nice stuff. An interesting album, I would say, first of all, at the core of this album, it's still thrash. It's almost like the thrash has taken a back seat and it's kind of, the whole album is leaning towards a much more radio-friendly, accessible, palatable sound. Much more melodic. The whole thing is much more melodic. This is Dust Bolt's Black Album. And you know what? This has really grown on me, actually. I think this is a really good album. It's just notably different from the first 4 in so many different ways. As I say, the thrash has taken a back seat, but it's still a heavy album. It is still a heavy album overall, but we do have a lot more clean vocals, a lot more kind of melodic tracks or mid-paced tracks in there. It is a lot more palatable. I think the influence of more modern bands, more, I guess, other bands maybe like Bullet for My Valentine or Slipknot, I kind of get that impression at times, and I could be wildly off. But certainly in tracks like the opening track, Leave No One Behind, and Eyewitness, Bullet, that definitely comes to mind, and also Slipknot as well. Certainly in the vocals, there's a lot of Corey Taylor in there. But they're good tracks, you know, really catchy. Some great riffs, very hooky, very memorable stuff. Tons of groove. You can get along and headbang along to it. This isn't the sort of album that you would put on if you were just looking for some frantic thrash. If you want frantic thrash, stick with these first 3-4 albums, definitely. If you want something that's maybe a little bit more groove orientated, a little bit more modern metal, hey, this is probably the one to go for. So Sound and Fury, the wild card album. I think this album does actually have a lineup. So we've got X, Tom on bass. They're alongside Flo, Nico, and Lenny inside the gatefold here. I would say, in fairness, that Leave No One Behind is a really good track. It's actually a really heavy one, some real groove in those riffs, really good vocals, really good vocal performance. Eyewitness is really good as well. I Am the One is a bit of an anthemic chant along track. New Flame is a bit of a shorter, thrashier track. Kind of, I think that's the statement track that they're trying different things. They're doing something a bit more modern, perhaps. Burning Pieces is an interesting number as well, as is Sound and Fury. But Burning Pieces, I don't know if it's sacrilegious to say it, but it kind of has a bit of a Disturbed vibe to it. Hey, maybe that's just my ears. Sound and Fury is a really good one. That also has a bit of a Disturbed vibe. Love and Reality, Disconnection is an interesting one. Very, very upbeat, very party, but there's some good riffs here. There's some good, enjoyable stuff. You Make Me Feel Nothing, a little bit more of a ballady track there, as is the closing track, Little Stone. But you know what? I think this is a good album. I put my money where my mouth is and say I think this is a good album. I bought this and I don't regret it. It's a solid album. I just personally prefer the thrashier albums myself, but Sound and Fury has really grown on me, actually, from listening to it quite a few times over the last couple of months. It's so catchy. Certainly with those first couple of tracks, Leave No One Behind and Eyewitness, and the title track, Sound and Fury. Proper earworm stuff. If you like Metallica Black Album, or if you like Bullet for My Valentine, very catchy, very palatable, thrash, heavy metal, modern metal, whatever, I think you're going to dig this. So, my friends, there you have it. Dust Bolt from Germany, thrash, but experimenting in latter times. A very interesting band that you absolutely need to hear. I would say if you're looking for some thrash, you're going to want to check out these first 4 albums, definitely. We've got the brilliant Violent Demolition there. We've got Awake the Riot. We've got Mass Confusion. And we've got Trapped in Chaos. If you're unashamed and you don't mind listening to something that isn't necessarily 100% thrash, I think at the core it is still thrash, then go for Sound and Fury. It's a good album. It's one that I would recommend. I'd recommend checking it out. If you're looking for some good metal, Dust Bolt are a band you need to hear. So, my friends, what are your thoughts on Dust Bolt? If you haven't heard them, check them out and let me know what you think. Are you already a fan? If so, what do you think of these albums? What do you feel about Sound and Fury compared to the previous albums? Interested to hear. And one thing that I will say in Sound and Fury's defense is that I think it was recorded between 2020 and 2022. Just remind myself, apologies, it was recorded in 2022. So we can assume writing probably between 2020 and 2022. I think the world kind of terraformed within that time span, and maybe they had a bit more time on their hands to try and do something a little bit experimental, a bit different, lockdowns, pandemics, all that business. Hey, maybe that is a factor. You never know. But I think it's a good album. And let me know what you think of all of these albums. Interested to hear thoughts and opinions of others as always. Thanks very much for watching, my friends. Do feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment. Support is very much appreciated as always. Do check back soon for more reviews and recommendations of all the good heavy things. Until next time, do take care of yourselves, listen to Dust Bolt, and stay heavy.